Imagine an island so small you could jog around its entire coastline in just a few hours. A tiny speck of land adrift in the vast blue expanse of the Pacific Ocean. This is Nauru. It sits in a remote corner of Micronesia, a neighbor to nowhere. The nearest landmass of any significance is Kiribati, and that's still hundreds of kilometers away. Nauru is, to put it simply, one of the most isolated countries on Earth. It's the third smallest state in the world, just after Vatican City and Monaco. With a land area of only 21 square kilometers, it feels less like a country and more like a self-contained neighborhood floating in the middle of the ocean. What makes Nauru truly unique, however, isn't just its size or its isolation. It's the island's peculiar topography. A thin, fertile coastal strip where nearly all of its 12,000 residents live encircles a raised central plateau. This interior, known locally as topside, looks like a bizarre, lunar landscape. It's a stark, eerie expanse of jagged limestone pinnacles left behind by a century of intensive phosphate mining. This strange, man-made wasteland stands in stark contrast to the idyllic image of a tropical paradise one might expect. This duality is at the heart of Nauru's story. It is an island of contradictions. It boasts the classic Pacific visuals, swaying palm trees, brilliant turquoise waters, a coral reef teeming with life. It's a place that once had one of the highest per capita incomes in the world, a veritable island of wealth, but now struggles with deep-seated economic and social problems. It's a nation that is both a sovereign republic with a seat at the United Nations and a place that some have described in far more troubling terms. Nauru is not a simple place to understand. When you think of Pacific Islands, you probably picture resorts, tourists sipping cocktails, vibrant local markets catering to visitors. Nauru offers none of that. It is by most metrics the least visited country in the world. While destinations like Fiji or Tahiti count their visitors in the hundreds of thousands, Nauru's numbers are astonishingly small. Official estimates suggest that the island receives only around 200 tourists per year. That's not a typo. 200. So, why do so few people come here? The reasons are a complex mix of logistics, reputation, and a sheer lack of infrastructure. Firstly, getting there is both difficult and expensive. There's only one airline that flies to Nauru, Nauru Airlines, and its routes are limited and often subject to change. Then there's the visa process, which has a reputation for being notoriously slow, opaque, and unpredictable. Furthermore, Nauru simply isn't set up for tourism. No luxury resorts, no infinity pools, no tour operators offering jungle treks or scuba diving packages. Accommodation is limited to a couple of basic hotels, one of which is state-owned and has seen better days. There are very few restaurants, and the concept of a tourist attraction is almost non-existent beyond the island's natural, if scarred, landscape. This lack of visitors creates a strange, sealed-off atmosphere. The island's economy doesn't rely on the tourist dollar, so there's no incentive to create the polished, welcoming facade you find elsewhere in the Pacific. What you see in Nauru is what you get, the unvarnished reality of daily life. This is perhaps its most compelling and for some most intimidating feature. It's not a place that performs for outsiders. It's an island that exists for itself, for its people, operating according to its own rhythms and rules. For the intrepid few who do make the journey, this offers a rare glimpse into a country completely untouched by the global tourism machine. Every country has a capital, a center of government and commerce. For Nauru, that capital is listed as Yaren. But if you arrive expecting to find a city or even a town, you will be sorely disappointed. Yaren is not a city in any conventional sense of the word. There are no high-rise buildings, no bustling public squares, no traffic-choked boulevards. Instead, Yaren is a district on the island's southern coast that houses most of Nauru's key government buildings. It's a capital by function, not by form, a collection of important structures scattered along the main ring road. The key landmarks are all within a short walk of each other. Parliament House, main administrative offices, police station, Nauru International Airport, runway right by the main road, primary telecommunications center. These buildings are mixed with residential homes, small family-run shops, stretches of vegetation. There is no central business district, there is no downtown core. For a visitor it feels like a suburb forever searching for a center that doesn't exist. This arrangement comes from Nauru's size and settlement patterns. The entire population lives on the narrow coastal ring, so district lines blur. Life runs along the 19-kilometer ring road. Yaren is one section of that loop. It's where government business happens, but not the island's social or commercial heart. That role is dispersed across small communities and the Capel and Partner supermarket. Yaren reflects Nauru itself. a country stripped to essentials. There is a government buildings. There is a need for law, a police station. There is a connection to the outside world, an airport. But there is no grandeur or symbolic architecture. The capital is purely functional, a practical solution for a tiny state. It's a nation focused on survival rather than spectacle, where state machinery is part of the neighborhood. For a brief, shining moment in its history, Nauru was one of the richest places on Earth. In the 1970s and early 1980s, its GDP per capita was second only to Saudi Arabia. This incredible wealth came from a single source: phosphate. The island was essentially a giant deposit of high-grade phosphate rock, the fossilized droppings of seabirds. This white gold fed the world's fertilizers, and demand was insatiable. After independence in 1968, Nauruans took control of mining. Suddenly, they had a trust fund worth over $1 billion Australian dollars. Wealth transformed society overnight. Money flowed freely, the government offered extensive welfare services, education, healthcare, housing. Many Nauruans stopped working, hiring foreign laborers to do the work. People bought luxury sports cars, flew on lavish shopping trips to Hawaii and Australia. It felt like they were on top of the world. But the riches were finite, a fragile illusion. Intensive strip mining was destroying the island. Giant mechanical claws scraped the land year after year, leaving the barren limestone pinnacles of the topside that cover 80% of the interior. Forests were wiped out. The island's heart became uninhabitable and unfarmable. The industry was consuming the homeland, a Faustian bargain. By the turn of the century, the party was over. High-grade phosphate was nearly exhausted. The massive trust fund had been squandered by catastrophic mismanagement, disastrous investments, and staggering corruption. The wealth vanished almost as quickly as it had appeared. Nauru went from symbol of prosperity to cautionary tale. The sports cars were left to rust, free services were cut, and the nation plunged into deep economic crisis. The legacy: a hollowed-out island and a shattered economy. In recent years, Nauru has acquired a new, deeply troubling reputation, one that has little to do with its phosphate history. It has become known as a key pillar of Australia's controversial offshore detention policy. Since 2012, with a brief interruption, Australia has paid Nauru hundreds of millions of dollars to host processing centers. These centers process asylum seekers who attempt to reach Australia by boat. Many are fleeing war and persecution from Iran, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka. They are intercepted at sea and transferred to the remote island. There they are held in detention camps while their refugee claims are assessed. The arrangement has thrust Nauru into the international spotlight for the wrong reasons. Human rights organizations, the United Nations, medical professionals, have repeatedly condemned the detention conditions. Reports describe severe overcrowding, inadequate medical care, and a pervasive hopelessness among detainees. The psychological toll of indefinite detention on such an isolated island has been devastating. That has led to widespread mental health issues, including depression, self-harm, and suicide attempts. Critics call the centers an open-air prison, warehousing vulnerable people out of sight and out of mind. For Nauru, the centers have been a lifeline, morally compromised. The income from hosting the centers is now a mainstay of the economy, propping up the government and providing local employment. It's a transaction that creates an uncomfortable dynamic. The Nauruan government has become fiercely protective of the arrangement, often restricting access for journalists and monitors, deepening the island's secrecy. Many accuse Nauru of trading sovereignty for Australian cash, becoming a client state. The detention centers have reshaped the island's fabric. They've created a two-tiered society: Nauruan citizens, expatriate center staff, and asylum seekers living in limbo. Tensions have occasionally flared, and the long-term social consequences are still unfolding. Today, Nauru's global image is less about beaches or phosphate, and more a remote holding pen. It's a dark chapter added to an already troubled story. To visit Nauru is to be constantly confronted by jarring contrasts. On the one hand, there is the undeniable natural beauty of a tropical island. The water that laps at its shores is a brilliant, almost impossible shade of turquoise, clear enough to see the intricate patterns of the coral reef below. Fringing the coastline are stretches of white sand beaches, shaded by leaning coconut palms. When the sun sets over the Pacific, it paints the sky in spectacular hues of orange, pink, and purple. In these moments, it's easy to see the paradise that Nauru could be, the idyllic island that exists in our collective imagination. Yet this picture of paradise is perpetually fractured by the harsh realities of the island's social and economic situation. Just behind the beautiful shoreline, you see signs of struggle everywhere. Many of the houses are dilapidated with rusting corrugated iron roofs and crumbling walls. Derelict cars and abandoned mining equipment from the boom years litter the landscape, slowly being reclaimed by tropical vegetation. The infrastructure is visibly strained, power outages are common, and fresh water is a precious commodity that has to be carefully managed. The island that was once a beacon of wealth now bears the unmistakable marks of poverty and neglect. This contrast is most stark when you compare the coastal fringe with the island's interior. A short drive up the hill from the lush coast takes you to the bizarre and desolate landscape of Topside. Here, the earth is dead. The jagged, gray limestone pinnacles stretch to the horizon, a silent, haunting testament to the environmental destruction that funded the island's fleeting prosperity. It feels like another planet, a place devoid of life. Standing there, caught between the vibrant blue of the ocean on one side and this gray, skeletal wasteland on the other, you feel the full weight of Nauru's tragic history. The people of Nauru live within this duality every day. They are surrounded by a tropical paradise, yet face some of the highest rates of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease in the world. A legacy of the shift away from traditional foods to imported processed goods during the phosphate boom. Villagers walking between homes and shore, families near beach supermarket shelves with processed foods, traditional Nauruan foods contrasted with canned imports, locals fishing and swimming but with limited employment opportunities. Life in Nauru moves at its own unhurried pace, dictated by the heat, the tides, and the tight-knit community bonds. The day often begins early, before the tropical sun becomes too intense. People emerge from their homes clustered along the coastal ring road, and the island slowly comes to life. The main road becomes a hub of activity, children walking to school, people heading to government jobs, people heading to state-owned enterprises. There's a sense of familiarity. Everyone seems to know everyone else, greeting each other with a wave or a nod. Work and school structure the morning, but the heart is in small, informal interactions. People gather in the shade to chat or head to Capel and Partner Supermarket, the island's de facto town square. People catch up on news, share gossip, and buy groceries, mostly imported canned goods, rice, and frozen meat. Fresh produce is scarce and expensive, a result of mining that destroyed much of the arable land. The diet contributes to the nation's severe public health crisis. In the afternoon heat, the island takes a collective siesta, roads quieten, people retreat indoors or to shady spots by the sea. As the day cools, life spills back outside, beaches fill up, sports fields buzz, men fish from the reef, casting into the surf. A spirited game of Australian rules football is often underway. Young people socialize, listen to music on their phones, and connect with friends. Evenings are quiet and family-oriented. There are no cinemas, theaters, or nightclubs. Social life centers on the home and the church. Many Nauruans are devout Christians. Church activities matter. Families gather for meals, watch television, or sit outside enjoying the evening breeze. It's a simple, communal existence unchanged for decades. Life is constrained by the island's limitations, yet enriched by the resilience of its close-knit community. People sitting on porches at dusk, community gathering with smiling group and local celebration, emphasizing the enduring strength of human connection despite material hardships. To understand Nauru today, you have to dig into its past, a past literally etched into the island's surface. For thousands of years, Nauru was home to 12 distinct tribes living a sustainable existence based on fishing, cultivation of coconut trees, pandanus trees. Their first major contact with the outside world came in the late 19th century when the island was annexed by Germany. In 1900, New Zealand prospector Albert Ellis discovered the island was almost entirely made of high-grade phosphate rock. That discovery would seal Nauru's fate for the next century. The mining began in earnest under a German-British consortium. After World War I, control passed to a joint administration of Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom. For the next 50 years, foreign powers systematically stripped the island of its phosphate, exporting millions of tons to fertilize farms across the globe. The Nauruan people saw little of the immense profits generated from their land. They were largely excluded from the industry, their homeland carved up and shipped away before their eyes. In 1968, Nauru achieved independence and took control of its phosphate industry. This ushered in an era of incredible wealth. The newly sovereign nation sold its resource on the open market and the money poured in. The government established the Nauru Phosphate Royalties Trust, intended to secure the island's future for when the phosphate ran out. For a time, it seemed like a masterstroke. Nauru became a model of post-colonial success, fabulously rich. But this golden age was built on a foundation of sand. The government, inexperienced in managing such vast sums, made a series of spectacularly poor decisions. The trust fund was plundered for risky investments, including a failed London musical about the life of Leonardo da Vinci, and a portfolio of international property that was eventually sold off at a loss to pay debts. Corruption became rampant. By the early 2000s, with the phosphate nearly gone and the trust fund empty, Nauru was effectively bankrupt. The history of Phosphate, which had promised a future of permanent security, had instead left the island with a legacy of environmental ruin and economic despair. Nauru lingers in the world's consciousness, a half-forgotten whisper, a place more known for its bizarre statistics than for its people or its culture. It is the world's smallest island nation, the least visited country, the former richest place turned cautionary tale. These labels flatten Nauru into a caricature, obscuring a complex human story. The island remains a mystery to the outside world largely because its story is too uncomfortable to fit simple narratives. Its isolation is both a cause and a consequence of this obscurity. Because it is difficult and expensive to get to, very few outsiders ever see it with their own eyes. The narrative is controlled by the few who do make it there. Journalists, aid workers, government contractors, each with their own agenda. The Nauruan government's suspicion of the media, particularly in relation to the detention centers, has led it to create a wall of secrecy, further limiting the flow of information. This limits information, creating a vicious cycle of stereotype and retreat. Nauru's story challenges myths about progress and development. Wealth can be a curse, natural resources can destroy as easily as build, the legacy of colonialism can cast a shadow that lasts for generations. It also serves as a mirror to the policies of larger, more powerful nations like Australia, reflecting how wealth and geography can be used to outsource moral responsibility. In many ways, the world prefers not to look too closely. Ultimately, Nauru remains a mystery because it exists on the periphery of our globalized world. It is a footnote in geopolitical strategy, a rounding error in global economic charts. But for the 12,000 people who call it home, it is the center of the universe. It is a place of memory, of struggle, of surprising resilience, and of enduring community. It is an island that has been profoundly shaped by the outside world, by colonialism, by global markets, by international politics, and then largely forgotten by it. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Nauru is not why it failed, but how, against all odds, it continues to endure.